You're listening to Secrets for Scaling, a Gecko Board podcast that explores the growth secrets of successful founders and CEOs.
For this episode, we talked to Nick Franklin, founder and CEO of ChartMogul, a product offering SaaS and subscription analytics and revenue reporting. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for Secrets for Scaling.
Thanks for inviting me, Shannon.
So to kick things off, can you tell us a bit about how ChartMogul got started?
The idea came from really my experience prior to ChartMogul, where I was working at Zendesk, the SaaS customer service software company. I was my last role there was leading the kind of Asian market, kind of international expansion into the Asian markets, and we'd built up kind of a custom dashboard to use internally to track kind of our key subscription metrics like MRR, number of customers, and kind of see some of the trends there. And it was actually quite addictive to keep kind of checking this dashboard that we created to see how we were doing, how the quarter was going, how the month was going, this kind of thing. But the experience wasn't really optimized for subscription businesses or SaaS businesses. Like the data wasn't updating real time. It was quite hard to answer questions from the data. You know, if I wanted to see like what the average revenue per customer was in Hong Kong versus in Malaysia, or things like simple questions, it was quite hard to get those answers. So I figured that, you know, there must be enough sort of subscription businesses out there that would benefit from a sort of dedicated analytics solution that was, you know, serve their needs, you know, more specifically. And I'd been at Zendesk for 5 years at that time, so I decided to, you know, take the plunge, leave my nice role in a successful business, and go it alone, and build an analytics product sort of specifically for the subscription market.
Can you give us an idea of where you're at today in terms of customer numbers and traction?
Sure. Yeah. So we're just about to hit 900 paying customers. Yeah, we have a team of 21 people, mostly here in Berlin. But we have people in Canada, UK, and other parts of the world working remotely. And then we don't share publicly our MRR, but we're in the six figures of MRR, so over $1 million of run rate.
What year were you founded?
2014, late 2014. And then we got our first paying customer in January 2015.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's been pretty successful couple of years for you.
We feel proud, I guess, of what we've been able to do. Although there's always, if you read SaaSter and these other blogs from Jason Lemkin, it seems like really the truly best SaaS companies, they get to kind of $1 million run rate in, 12 to 18 months or something. These kind of rules of thumb. So we didn't quite achieve that, but I feel like it's going well. Of course, it was always nicer to grow faster, of course.
With that, what's been the biggest lesson you've learned so far in your growth journey?
I guess the importance of hiring the right team and building the right team. Like once you kind of prove that there's some initial market there or some initial like customers or initial users, pretty much everything else is just getting the right people on the boat. Like this is probably cliche, and there's lots of books that are about startups that probably say this, but I feel like as the founder, CEO of the business, that's like 90-something% of your job. Once you've kind of proved that there's something there, it's just to hire the right people and make sure that they're working together well and everyone's getting along and that this kind of thing. But really, just that's been the biggest lesson for me.
Are there any specific challenges about finding the right people, getting the right people on board that you've been experiencing?
In the early days, yeah. I mean, it was tough, especially when we're just getting started. It was tough for sure. Like no one had heard of us. We just moved to Berlin, so we're kind of new in town. Just trying to find those first people. I didn't have any network in the city, so I started to go to like meetups. I actually met my first kind of post seed. We got a seed round of funding from Point Nine Capital, and in December of 2014, and then right at the start of 2015, I went out to say, okay, better hire some people, but I don't know anyone, so went out to some meetups. I actually met my first hire at a product hunt meetup in Berlin. I think it was the first product hunt meetup in Berlin, and he's our still our director of content today. But as I found, as things have gone forward, as the teams got larger, it's become easier and easier. Especially it was really hard to find engineers willing to come aboard. Obviously, engineering is in very high demand discipline, so persuading good engineers to join your company is tough when you're just starting out. But now we have about half the company, I think, is involved in product or engineering of some sort at the moment, and we have a whole hiring process, and we've got much better at it, and we've had a lot of. It's just become 1,000 times easier in the last 6 months to kind of hire and recruit engineers. But I think it's just one of those things where you have to get a few people, and then it becomes much easier over time. That's what we've been finding anyway.
And is that just because the field is so competitive that they kind of have their pick a company, so brand awareness matters? I
think so, yeah. Definitely that's a big part of it. And part of it, I think, is the company and the product and the brand that we've built over the last 2 or 3 years. We have a lot of also developer products, things like CodeShip and Sentry, and these kind of developed products that developers use day to day. So they can kind of relate to what we're doing, perhaps, and more of them might have heard of us. If they've been working for other SaaS companies, they might have heard of what we do. But I also think it's having the right engineering leadership as well. They know that they'll be working for, among peers that they can kind of learn from, and these kind of things. Whereas if they're just joining a team with just 1 or 2 people who aren't that technical, there's probably not as much learning they can do. They're not joining a team. So now a new engineer joining our team gets to learn from the other people in the team, contribute. There's good leadership in place, these kind of things. So I think once you get all those pieces into place, the brand, the customers, the product, and the team in place, it just becomes much easier to be an attractive place for an engineer to join.
Did you also face challenges in knowing who the right people to hire were in the early days?
Absolutely. It's not always clear. You get some initial traction with the product, and you think it's not always clear what you should be investing in, especially as a first-time founder. It's should I be investing in sales and marketing now because we're getting some customers? So let's start spending money on sales and marketing, or even on paid advertising, things like this. When in hindsight, I would have probably done that a bit later and just really invested heavily into engineering earlier on, because that's it's, when you're just starting out, the product isn't very mature. It needs a lot of love and investment, and it's not ready to scale yet. So I think probably there's a temptation once you start to get that initial demand to kind of say, okay, let's start to scale that up. And I think a lot of people make the same mistake, is scaling sales and marketing too early. So definitely, I would have probably tried to scaling engineering before sales and marketing. And I'm not sure I got the balance perfect with this company, but I feel we've got it right now.
At the stage that ChartMogul is currently in, it's pretty typical for the founder to be transitioning from a maker role to a manager role. Is that true for you?
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. I no longer am responsible for every part of the business. We have a head of engineering, a head of customer success and customer support, someone to run finance and the operations side of the business, which is a huge relief for myself, because I'm not the best, and I tend to not have the best attention span when it comes to these kind of operational parts of the business. So yeah, having, and then we have a head of content. So yeah, over time we're adding all the people that can lead the different various functions of the business. We still don't have a kind of VP marketing, and we don't have a VP of sales yet, but these are positions we'd like to fill for sure. Yeah.
How have you made that transition a success so far? Or would you say that you've made it a success?
Well, it's still ongoing. I still pretty much am heavily involved in product. I'm heavily involved in sales still, and marketing. So it's ongoing. It's happened in engineering quite well, because we have about half the company, or nearly half the company's engineering. So we have some head of engineering and structure in place there. So that's working out really well in customer success and customer service. That's working really well. The other areas we just haven't, I guess, we just haven't got around to it yet. The biggest lesson for me has been, I think, promoting from within whenever possible. If you have a bunch of people doing the job and it's clear that one person is kind of the natural leader and kind of steps up, then that's really a great thing and a truly great thing to have happen. It doesn't always happen, of course, and sometimes you have to hire from outside, but I think that's a really nice thing for the company, for the culture as well, and to kind of promote people up from within. But I think just letting go. I mean the main thing is just to find people that are really, really competent, that can just do the job, and clearly can do the job much better than yourself. That's the key. And it's, of course, that's, finding really, really competent people is tough, but you just have to do it. And then, just to be, when you do make hires, never make a hire and if you have any doubt about it. I think there's a phrase I heard somewhere where it's like, if you have any doubt, then there is no doubt. Just don't make the hire. So just, sometimes it takes, for our head of finance and operations, it took about a year or so to find that person that we felt was the right fit. So sometimes I think just hiring slow, taking your time until you find someone that you're really, really confident can do the job way better than yourself is just going to own the problem. This is the kind of key, I guess, to building that team that you can rely on.
I'd imagine that gut instinct plays a bit of a role there too, when it comes to at least cultural fit, if nothing else.
You're probably right. Like a lot of building a great management team is also the people's ability to work well with yourself as the founder. So that's obviously part of it, and who you think you're going to work well with and be able to trust to kind of take ownership and get things done. Absolutely. A lot of that, I guess a lot of that does, but then, also track records. We always do reference checks and things like that to make sure that, we cover all our bases. So, yeah. We're getting better at it as we go along.
As you're in this transition phase, how do you get the business and keep the business and your team focused on the direction you and your investors want to be in?
About 1/3 of the team is remote. So having regular meetings, I try to have one-on-ones with all my direct reports regularly. I'm not always the best at making sure they are super regular, but we do try, and everyone in the company tries to do one-on-ones with their direct report regularly. And then also having kind of all hands meetings. We tend to once a quarter have a kind of all hands where we kind of do a longer thing. And then every 2 weeks we have a quick stand up where one person from each department just kind of speaks for 1 or 2 minutes about what's been going on, what that department's been working on for the last couple of weeks, and what they'll be working on for the next 2 weeks, and that kind of thing. Just so everyone in the company kind of knows what everyone else is working on, and there's alignment there, and no one's surprised when they hear things that they should have heard before and things like that. So we recently invested in a proper video conference setup, like nice 60-inch television with the wide angle lens and boardroom mic speaker thing, so that if people aren't in the office, they can feel like they're almost there, and the audio is really good and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of helped for kind of bringing everyone together. I think that answers your question.
Yeah.
a little bit. That's more about remote stuff, I guess, than alignment. But I guess in terms of alignment, it's just about setting. We kind of set the kind of main primary goals of the company, and then just kind of keep reiterating them, and try and set some kind of timeline around different projects and when people should be aiming to have those complete. I think that's how we approach things at the moment.
When do you know the time was right to start building a management team?
I think I knew from day one, honestly, because I was a solo founder, so I realized from day one, the more help I can get, the better. So I started looking from day one for people that can really help me run the thing. Yeah. So
switching gears a bit, you guys are experts on SaaS metrics, obviously. At the stage of growth your business is at, what's the most important SaaS metric for you right now?
Right now, I think we're focused on customer churn, and our customer churn isn't that high. It's around 3% or something like this. It's not too high. It might even be less. I can't quite remember. But the key causes of the churn are things that we think we can solve with engineering, basically, and product development. Like we do an NPS survey quarterly, and every time someone does cancel, we do a sort of exit, sort of interview with them, and we ask them their reason for canceling. And over 50% of the time, the reason is not, the price or they're unhappy. It's sort of limitation in the product. So we're really focused on addressing those limitations in the product, and we hope that will drive down our churn. And there's a bunch of reasons for focusing on churn at our stage. One is that as you get larger, as your MRR gets larger, that the churn has a bigger and bigger impact. So where you have to add more and more new business every month just to get to zero from the impact of churn. So when you're small, low MRR churn isn't so crippling. But as you get to scale, churn becomes a major inhibitor to growth. And the other main reason that we're focused on it is that word of mouth is by far our number one kind of customer acquisition channel. And of course, if companies cancel, they're probably no longer going to give good word of mouth. So solving those issues where we want to aim for get as close to 100% retention as we can. Of course, there's a few reasons for churn, like people are changing their business model, or they're things aren't going well, or something like this, where that might be another reason where you can't do anything about it. But we believe that the majority of the churn we can fix with product development.
As you collect and analyze the NPS data and are talking to your customers, have you already identified strategies for helping with retention? And if so, are you comfortable sharing them?
Absolutely. A lot of it is just around some small things in the product that people aren't quite happy with. Like maybe they can't quite get the numbers the way they want to because the data in their billing system, at any scale, once a company gets to a certain size, they usually have some data in their database or billing system relating to how they invoice their customers that isn't in the cleanest format. So they'll import that data, and of course that if the data's a bit messy, it can create a skewed result in our product. So having some ability to manually or automatically kind of clean the data if it's not always in a perfectly structured format, is something that would help. That's a big one that would help some of our customers. That's one complaint that we can fix with engineering. That's one example. There's a lot of other like smaller ones we know about that we're working hard to address those issues. Yeah.
When identifying these metrics like churn or any of your other growth metrics, do you use a particular framework or process for identifying those?
Well, we use obviously ChartMogul for measuring most of our subscription metrics like MRR, lifetime value, churn, retention, all these kind of things. We collect NPS. We use Typeform, which is a really nice, I think a lot of people know Typeform at this point, but it's a really nice way to collect surveys and forms to collect data from customers. They're also a customer of ours, which we're very proud of. And that's really nice. We usually do an in-app message using Intercom, link the customer through to a Typeform, and then we collect the NPS score that way. And we actually just the most useful part of the NPS score for me isn't necessarily the score. The score gives a nice benchmark of how well perhaps the service is improving or not. But it's the free text comments that people leave. So you just get huge amounts of feedback from those free text comments. It's like really invaluable, and we just dump it into a Google Sheet and share it with the whole company so everyone can see, like, this is what people care about. This is what, and that's really helpful. I usually share it with the whole customer success, product engineering team, like, guys, you have to read this stuff. We have tons of like feedback all the time, but we try and kind of crunch it and create a roadmap that addresses our desire to build new features, but also improve and fix things that are already there.
We've noticed that to build predictable growth seems to be the number one question for founders who are scaling a business. Do you feel like you have predictable growth right now?
You're absolutely right. Like having scaling is one of the hardest parts. Like once you get past that kind of initial traction, you pass 100,000 in MRR. How do you scale? How do you keep up your percentage growth? SaaS, Jason Lemkin's always talking about growing at 10% month over month, which is incredibly hard. Obviously, it kind of sounds easy, but it's actually incredibly difficult once you reach 6 figures in MRR. So I would say for some of our business, it's fairly predictable. And for other parts, it isn't. Like we have a fairly predictable stream of, trial signups, inbound leads coming in, which is mostly driven by word of mouth. And that's fairly predictable. But, we're also experimenting with other things we can do. Like with one of our largest sources of leads is content and content marketing. And that's highly unpredictable. It seems to be a bit like the movie industry or something, where you can produce one piece of content and it's a total blockbuster and you get 10,000 hits, views of the piece in the first day, and it keeps paying off over time. And then some pieces just flop and it's highly unpredictable. Yeah. So we talk sometimes in our team, like how can we increase the chance of something being a hit and reduce the chance of it not taking off or not being as useful or as appealing and engaging as we thought it would be. So that part is like highly fluctuates.
Have you found any answers to those questions? How do you approach that when you are trying to identify what is going to work more predictably? I
guess we've kind of analyzed what worked in the past. So sometimes we did get pieces where we published them. Like we published something called the SaaS metrics cheat sheet, the ultimate SaaS metrics cheat sheet. It's like a 2-page cheat sheet where you have all the SaaS metrics like MRR, churn rate, really summarized into a nice, well-designed 2-page summary. And this took off really well and kept paying dividends over time. And we had a few other hits like this. So, we had one that Ed wrote called The Rise of the API SaaS. And what we found, and there's been a couple of others, is that usually it's like right at there's kind of some sort of nascent conversation going on or demand there where it hasn't reached the full mainstream yet, but it's kind of on a topic or something like that is kind of on the rise. And people are talking more about it, and it's growing in importance and so it's kind of, I hate this word, but like zeitgeist, where it's like highly topical, and having a great title really helps as well, because obviously that's the first thing people see before they even read your content is the title. So we found that having a really great title, having something that's really topical or zeitgeist, but that hasn't reached like full mainstream saturation in the kind of public conversation that's happening on social media. And if you can kind of nail something that's like really relevant at the right time, at the perfect timing, just a few weeks before it really becomes mainstream, that adds to the conversation about whatever the topic is, then that's when it's worked really well. And we've done it probably only about 4 or 5 times over the last 2 years or so. But when it works really, really well. So I guess we're kind of consciously trying to, for each new piece of content that we decide to write about, we consciously ask ourselves, does this tick those boxes? Is there a chance that it can tick those boxes and be a success? And not all content, obviously. Some things that we're just announcing a new feature or something like that, it's fairly run-of-the-mill stuff. But for the more opinion piece or thought leadership piece or something like that, we try and see if we can contribute in that way.
Yeah. Once you identify those things at work, it's kind of tough to do them at scale because it dilutes it, right? Like it's going to have more impact if you're not creating those awesome pieces of content every week, but rather it's every now and then.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we did it. I mean, we're also, guilty of that. Like we did one cheat sheet, and so we decided to do a bunch more cheat sheets. But I guess the nice thing about a cheat sheet is it's kind of a resource that you can keep coming back to if it's done really well. So even if it doesn't, not all of them took off in a big way, but if it's done well, it's kind of useful to go back to. But not all of them did as well as the first one. I think there was another one of them, the ultimate churn cheat sheet or something like that, did really well. It took off. It was on the top of Hacker News for the day, and so these kind of things. But you can't really control it. But certainly, if you have a good idea, it's usually a good idea because it's an original idea. So the next time you do it, it's no longer original, and therefore it's you've kind of worn off.
Right.
So
what do you think? You mentioned good titles. What do you think makes for a great title?
I'm not sure. Like something that makes. I think I'm not an expert, but I think something that you kind of know what the article is gonna. Something you kind of know what the article is going to say a little bit. It's like a teaser for the main piece, right? Like you kind of know, okay, this is, you see it, okay, I kind of know roughly what this is going to be about, and it's something I think I'll find interesting, so I want to read more. I hate clickbait and those kind of titles where it's like disingenuous to the user, to the reader, which the internet's obviously full of these kind of titles, like you won't believe what you're about to see, this kind of thing. That stuff's just horrible. So yeah, I don't know if I have a great answer there, but I think it's something that makes you want to read more. Gives away a lot about what the main piece is about, and makes you want to read in more detail what it's about, and have some punch to it. Not just can't just read super plain. It has to have some kind of punch to it, not just bland. In the way it reads, I guess.
So switching gears again a bit, how have you found balancing work and life as a founder? Is there anything that's been particularly helpful with striking that balance?
I think Zendesk, where I worked before starting ChartMogul, which was started by 3 Danish founders, 2 of which at least had families at the time. I think all 3 have families now, but 2 which had families at the time. And I think they kind of set the tone at Zendesk. It's like, this isn't a startup where you have to kill yourself for us to do well. It's not like some sort of crazy, work 100-hour weeks and sleep at the office kind of thing. And Zendesk was a very successful business. We IPO'd on the New York Stock Exchange, et cetera. So it's that experience, and kind of showed that you don't have the thing is to work in a smart way, and not in a kind of obsessive way where it's like diminishing returns after a while. So for me, just trying to be smart about my time. Also, we had a baby 18 months ago, so me and my wife. So these days, I generally spend the weekends taking care of our daughter for the most part, and I maybe work a little bit when she's napping or in the evenings on the weekends, but generally weekends are more for family time, and I'll just work late on the weekdays if I need to catch up or do a bit more work than is normally fitting into a normal work week. So yeah, it's tough though, for sure. There is always more work than it's possible to do in a day, so you just have to ruthlessly prioritize. And there's no silver bullet there.
Prioritize and forgive yourself when you don't get to everything seems to be another big one.
Yeah, and getting really, there are just too many channels where people email you. A lot of it's cold email, so you have to just become really ruthless at basically not always answering every email. I mean, a lot of it's unsolicited, so it's fine, and answering the ones that are actually personal emails that are important to reply to, and things like that. So being just really efficient with communication channels, because otherwise that stuff can just eat up all your time. And being good, learning how to use like the mute function in Slack and things like that. The channel mute function helps, because Slack can also, it's an amazing tool, but it can also be highly distracting for getting stuff done. I think 37 signals are great. They've written a lot about that.
So this is a big question, but if you could pick just one thing and explain it in a minute or less, what do you think the secret to scaling is?
The secret to scaling, I'm not sure if there's any big secret. I think it depends on the type of business. So I think there's one thing there's about 3 business models, and there's 3 kind of acquisition models in SaaS. It's like, if you're very lucky, you have the kind of viral loopback effect. And if you have that, the secret is just to do everything in your power to optimize that. And there's a bunch of metrics around measuring viral coefficiency, I think, and things like this. And I'm not an expert on that at all. And then the 2 more common models are sort of more inbound model and the more of an outbound enterprise model, or traditional model. So I have the most experience in inbound. And I think the main secret is just to drive demand via word of mouth, because that is usually always going to be the biggest channel. And you can only really control that by just investing in your product and your service and trying to make it better and better. And also building your brand and investing in your brand over time. And there is no silver bullet or secret to doing that. It just takes a lot of time and investment. But I think over time it pays dividends, and it will amplify the word of mouth effect that you get for your product. For outbound, I mean, it's a whole different set of for those type of business models, a whole different set of issues. It's about managing sort of a sales pipeline, SDRs and BDRs at kind of the top of the funnel, people to close the deals and retain the customers and these kind of things. So that's not a great answer to a single sentence that's the secret to scaling. But I think I don't think there is one. I guess if I had to write one question.
It sounds like, with the focusing on the inbound specifically, that by building a genuine brand and a quality product, you're setting yourself up to build a loyal customer base. And with that loyal customer base comes better retention and better opportunity for scale. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, I think with most SaaS companies like that are very inbound, doing paid ad campaigns and field marketing and these things, they can move the needle a little bit. They can kind of make the curve a little bit steeper, but the main drivers are the kind of product, word of mouth via the existing customer base, and the kind of brand, etc. And all the other activities is, you definitely should do it. Like, it's important, going to events, meeting customers, producing great content, doing podcasts, etc. But I think that's all about kind of just tilting the curve a little bit steeper, something like that. That's my theory.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. This has been awesome, Nick. This has been a really great conversation. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Shannon. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Gecko Board's Secrets for Scaling podcast. Hope to catch you next time.